welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting Thursday, September 8th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. located in the Monomoy Regional High School Library. I would like to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed through the MRSC YouTube channel. I'd like to bring the meeting to order at 6:33 and sorry, I just lost my train of thought. With a roll call. I also would like to remind everyone that Sharon Stout is participating remotely. So Ms. Stout?
Present.
Ms. Tolley?
Present.
Ms. Games?
Present.
Mr. Russell?
Present.
Ms. Henderson?
Present.
And the chair is present. Sorry about that, guys, just brain cramp. Just one moment also, I'd also like to let the public know that Nancy Scott has resigned from the school committee effective August 24th of 2022, and we will have more information on that moving forward regarding the replacement of that member. Moving on to public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Additional time at the discretion of the chair. Seeing none. First item on the agenda is reports and discussions, remote participation, reply from the Monomoy Regional School District Legal Counsel. Meredith and I had the opportunity to meet with our counsel, Mark Terry, to go back to him with our questions from our last meeting. So the first question we had was, we had a request to review the motion and the intent of the motion. The council reviewed our motion and confirms that the intent of the motion, as reflected in the minutes on July 14th, is to move to in-person meetings and subject to the remote participation policy. In reference to the second paragraph, which was the second question, for our remote participation policy, the sentence in question was the open meeting law regulations governing remote participation, 940 CMR 2910, remain in effect except where the governor's executive order specifically suspends certain requirements. That was quote, end quote. The executive order has expired. Further, it's subject to rules that don't exist, and only the statute has been amended, which will expire on 3/31 of 2023. So we are to stay the course, as we call pre-COVID guidelines. Because the governor's amendment to the statute is in place only until March 31st of 2023, we can allow each subcommittee to vote on whether they will meet in person, remotely, or what they call a hybrid model for their meetings until March 31st of 2023. Each subcommittee is required to hold their first meeting entirely in person and vote in their chair and adopt one of the following that I listed. And then there are two specific motions that you would do with verbiage that we could provide, so that's very clear on what that looks like. So I know that was a lot, so I'm going to go back to the first, second, or third, or you guys can open for discussion. Any questions? Yeah.
I would just love to request to see this all in writing.
Yeah, that's fine. We met in person, so it's my notes.
Yeah.
So there's no there's no documentation, there's no email or anything. So, but we could put everything in a statement document, if that's helpful, so everyone can use it as reference.
That'd be really helpful, just to see the language that was specifically.
And I can send that out with the verbiage he provided for the motions, so that's clear for each subcommittee, so we're all doing the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Games.
So just to clarify, so, and I'll just use policy as an example if you don't mind. So we need to meet again in person, elect our new chair, and then take a vote amongst those members on how we're going to meet going forward through March 31. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
One other piece I will mention, because Ms. Gaines, you made me remember, we did ask Mark Terry about the type of technology required under each, and I know that's been a concern for folks. So for, well, let's call it traditional, is what they call it, traditional, motion one, pre-COVID. Under this meeting, the tech, let's see, no, hold on. Maybe I'm wrong. Hold on. No one person, one of them is different than the other. Under the statement. Okay, so under the first one, which is traditional, the chair of the subcommittee is responsible to provide the technology, but under the traditional meeting, the only thing that has to be available is a telephone, if you were in Dr. Carpenter's office, it could be on speakerphone using a district telephone, or if you're the chair and you want to put the other person on your phone, that's an option too, but it's the responsibility of the chair of the subcommittee. So just be mindful of that when you're taking your vote, which preference you have as far as which type of meeting you want to move forward to through March. And then one second, Tina. The second is if you move to use the temporary open meeting law amendment to the statute pertaining to in-person or remote meetings. Under this meeting, technology needed for hybrid participation will be the responsibility of the subcommittee chair as well, and should be the best they can provide visually and audio. So laptop or, the best you can, there's no definition of the best you can provide. I'll use that loosely. It's the best the chair can provide, so.
And again, sorry, just clarifying,
Nope,
for anybody that might not be here or whatever. So that only applies if we opt to go hybrid, correct? So that whole technology, so if we opt to go fully remote, that's an option for us through March 31.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Talley.
So under that second branch of hybrid, I guess, or using technology the best that can be provided as the responsibility of the chair, did you guys talk at all about what that looks like? Because my understanding is that we are not supposed to be using personal devices, like a personal laptop, as school committee members during our public meetings.
It's as clear as mud, as Mark Terry likes to say. You can use your personal device. If there's a preference, there is, I'm sure, a Chromebook that the district could provide to the chair of the subcommittee, and I think that's absolutely acceptable. I know we've done that before. So if the chair of the subcommittee is willing to go see Leah and pick that up prior to their meeting, I think there's nothing wrong with that either.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Sorry.
And just, this is based on my understanding and my many years of chairing committees and commissions. I believe that you can use your personal device, but I would just caution people that if there's ever an open meeting law violation or anything like that filed, they can request access so I just wanted to let people know that. That's why we use the Monomoy email address and not our personal email addresses. So just putting that out there.
Nope, that's perfect. And so it may be easier for you to decide that if you're going to be meeting in person, you decide that as a subcommittee, that you meet at a district location where there is a phone available to put someone on speakerphone in that situation. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, clarification, I probably just didn't hear it. Thank you, Tina. Once this vote takes place, we're talking about one vote and for the next 3 or 4 or 5 subcommittee meetings. We're all together or we're not all together, we're virtual. It's not like each time we're going to have a meeting, the chair can decide that for whatever reasons, I'd like it to be virtual. But next month, we're able to join together.
Okay, I think what Terry's asking is you can change it every month. Is that what you're saying, or you're not? Okay.
That's I'm looking to find out.
Oh, my understanding, based on what Jackie said, is I think we have to meet in person, and then make our decision as a group, and then going forward, whatever that decision is through March 31. I think.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
Yes.
The flexibility lies in the traditional model that if you have someone who needs to participate remotely, i.e. it is physically unreasonable for them to attend the meeting, you're in Colorado on a business meeting and you physically can't be there, then you would exercise contacting your chair of the subcommittee and they would have to give permission for you to attend remotely. And in that case, it would be no less than a phone, speakerphone.
Okay, and sorry, I'm just clarifying again. So thank you for that statement, because it sounds like we don't need to filter it through the chair. It's now up to the subcommittee chair. Okay.
It's my understanding that it can go through the subcommittee chair, okay? But we have to be, it's important that we are consistent so that we don't discriminate against anyone on what our understanding of physically unreasonable is. And it's
Okay.
defined in the policy, and if people have questions on that, we can talk about that further at another time. But that one's not as clear as that, it's better. I understand it, so if somebody has a question, they can certainly ask me, and we can talk about, chair to chair, like, how do you feel about this? What would you do? I think that's probably the best way to handle it if you're wondering, what the situation is.
Okay. That's good.
Ms. Henderson, did you have your hand up, or are you good?
I'm good.
You're good? All right. Ms. Polly?
I just want to thank you and acknowledge that I know this has been a complicated and frustrating process to understand, and I received emails from some townspeople that also acknowledged this was complicated and hard to understand, and appreciated the conversation that the school committee has been having publicly to dig into this and help them understand better. So just thank you for
Yep.
clarifying all this.
No, you're very welcome. I'll put my notes into a more formal document and provide that to the subcommittees or to the members, so that you can use it for your subcommittees, so that we're all consistent in doing the same things. And that is all I have. There's no more. Oh, Ms. Henderson?
Yeah.
Did I forget something?
No. I think that it was important to have the conversation, and it was nice that I felt like afterwards, we did have more clarity around it, and it was nice to hear that we could kind of separate our whole committee with the subcommittees. But I just think we should be aware, and just keep on top of it as things are changing, as we get closer to March 31st, and making sure that, we do have our ducks in a row, so we don't find ourselves in a similar digging situation.
And Mark Terry did emphasize that, as always, for us to encourage the committee that, the best we can do is to be here in public and present as much as we can, and that it's to be used as little, if not at all, if possible, and, that folks are moving away from it, and we're not the only ones. He himself is on a school committee, and they've moved away from it, from a much larger district that live much farther away, and are finding productivity better, and they're finding the public's liking it better, and it's just kind of better optically all around. So just to encourage us to continue that in that good spirit, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Games.
before we move to the next item, so do we not have minutes tonight, or did I miss something?
We do not have minutes tonight. I thought they were on my one in my email. I'm sorry, do we not have minutes tonight? No. We do not have minutes tonight.
Okay.
All right.
Just
So we'll
wanted
be
to
at the
make sure
next
I
meeting.
didn't miss something. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. If no more questions, we will move on to the next item, which is Ms. Karen Gilmet, press box update.
Hi, how are you guys?
Wonderful, and you?
Excellent. Thank you for having me tonight. I wanted to let you know where we stand with our stadium press box project. And sort of the background to this, well, I've been asking Scott since I started, and I'm in my 7th year, so for me personally, that's, I've been thinking about it for a while, but the Booster Club meets the third Wednesday of every month, and last year we started discussing this and what would it take to get a press box built, and so we put together a subcommittee and started meeting to sort of get it moving forward. And so in working with the district and Michael, what we need to do to get this done and all the logistical things that sort of go into it, because this is my first building project, so So I was pretty raw with that. So it's been a learning process, but so far so good. So our committee members are myself, Terry DeVoe, Nicole Moniz, Ken Moniz, Michelle Canto, Wendy Upson, and Diane Nash, and all are active members of the Booster Club as well. And we started, like I said, we started our meetings last, I think it was January, when we first started meeting to discuss this project and what it would entail. So we've come up with an ambitious timeline, and we all know that things can change, but the hope is that we can open by next fall 2023. And so what we started doing late spring, early summer this year is applying for grants and soliciting donations, because this will be funded through the Booster Club. We're not asking the district for money. The district has generously offered to pay for the architectural plans that are currently being drawn up, which is great. But the rest of it, the Booster Club is committed to raising the money for. And then this fall, I've met with the architect already, myself, Rick Travers, met with her, and we sort of went over the specs and what we wanted, and they're working on that, hopefully have that to us by November. I just found that out today. And then the committee members are going hard trying to raise money, applying for grants, and looking at some other grants that are coming up. We just found out that we were denied on one of the two of the grants that we've already applied for, so but there are plenty more that are out there that we're going after. And then I was hoping that by November we'll be through the bid process, but probably not, since it's going to take that long to get the specs. So again, hopefully by January we're through the bid process, and we have raised some money that we can actually get this project moving forward, and then set a date for the project completion by next spring, so that it gets built next summer and opens next fall 2023. So it's, I think at this point, a relatively ambitious timeline, but it's also doable if sort of all of our ducks fall in a row, which hopefully they do. Like I said, our progress so far is we've met with architect Jen Hockerman. She's drawing up the plans and the specs, and then we'll be sending it out to bid within the next couple months. And as I said already, the committee's working on getting more donations, and we're not going after donations yet until after the golf tournament that the Booster Club runs, because we don't all want to be going after the same people, and we're trying to not do that in general anyways. So we're really going to be trying to go after like larger corporation or larger donors instead of local businesses, but we will be hitting up local businesses as well once the golf tournament's kind of done and we move past that, so that we're not stepping on each other's toes here. The Cape Cod Cooperative grant that we applied for, we did get denied, but we are going to reapply for a smaller amount. The Dick's Sporting Goods we haven't heard from yet. And the NFL Foundation we haven't heard from yet. We applied for one through the Kraft Foundation, and we were denied from that one, but we kind of knew we were going to be, but we figured we'd try anyways. This scope of this project doesn't really meet what they do, but we figured we'd try anyways. So, and then there are more out there. Michelle Canto's really taken the lead on that. She's done this multiple times for other projects, so she's sort of the expert on that, and she's out there always looking for more, including the Cape Cod Foundation and the Harwich Fund, which we will be applying for grants from both of those. And the Booster Club itself is already committing $30,000 to the project from the money that they've already raised that they have. So they're making a financial commitment up front. And then again, we'll be seeking donations and more grant money through this fall and winter until we hit our goal, which we've set $200,000 for the goal. We won't know exactly the cost of the project until it goes out to bid, and comes back and we see what we have. But we're anticipating it being around $185,000 to actually build the structure, including the lift and the lift platform, et cetera. So next steps are continue our meetings, and really the biggest thing is fundraising for the committee. And so that's where we're at with this project. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Open for questions. Ms. Games?
Yeah, I'm curious, well, first of all, congratulations, because I know you've been thinking about this for a while. Does it have, because I was just thinking about funding, so is it going to have any community access beyond Monomoy, or if we rent it out to a soccer league or something? And the reason I'm asking this question, because I know we have, I think I have the acronym right, CPC. I don't even know if this would apply to a CPC funding, which Harwich, has, because it's in Harwich. So, but I think you have to have some type of community access tied to it.
Yes. So it will be available for when we rent out the field or when we let the town teams use our field. We typically let our town teams use our fields for free at least a few times a year. So it will be an option just like any other part of the facility, similar to what we do with the concession stand and bathrooms when we have rentals. So yes, it will, and it will be used for other things than sports. And I think that's a misconception that it's just for the games. It's not. It will be used for graduation. It will be used for other, especially the sound system and the viewing platform and the filming platform, other large events that we have on the turf, it will be used for as well.
Okay, that's good, like town meeting and, yeah, okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, related to that, I was curious about fundraising efforts and sort of the lens that you're approaching it with, and what you just said made me think of just wondering if you have had conversations around like grants that support media literacy or media training for students, or cultural grants, things like that, because I'm hearing a lot of opportunity in what the tools and equipment might be able to provide from an education perspective as well as a community cultural perspective.
Yes, absolutely. Steve Cass, our digital media expert here, who works, gets grant money for that specifically. I've been working with him, and we think that some of the money will be able to be used to cover the costs of the sound system and the electrical and all what goes into the media aspect of the project. Because like I said, it's being used for more than just sports.
I thought it was kind of appropriate. You guys have a corporation working on this from Louisville, Kentucky. So if anybody knows how to build one of these, perhaps somebody from Louisville, Kentucky knows the best design.
That was just one,
Was that a fluke?
No, we had reached out to some different companies just to kind of we started there, we didn't even know where to start, and they were one, but they had sent us plans, so that's kind of what we're going off of with the architect of this is kind of the base of what we want.
I mean, this thing's going to be stellar with tornado speed.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
I have one question about the technology piece. I know you said, full project, we're hoping for 200,000 or less. Does that include the technology that we're going to need? It does,
Yeah.
great. And then any electrical, plumbing, any of that we have to do?
Yep.
Okay.
And we're hopeful that the community will rally to do some of the electrical and the excavating, because we're going to have to dig up and then rebuild the sidewalk in that area behind the bleachers. So, and I'm pretty confident that we will have community members help with that.
All right, great, very cool. Ms. Henderson?
I do have a question. It's a silly one probably, but the existing bleachers, it's going to be added to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question on that, because that was my first question. Are we losing any seating?
We will not be losing any seating.
Are we
They will be
gaining any
behind.
seating?
We're not gaining any seating either. They'll be exactly the same, but there will be, we may, I shouldn't say that, we may lose a couple seats because there will be access points from the bleachers onto the press box. So we may, depending on, I'm not exactly sure if the ramps match up with where the I-beams are, where we're going to be putting it behind. Again, I'll probably have a better idea of that when we get the plans back from the architect and the specs, but, so we may lose some seats, but nothing major.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Oh, Ms. Stout?
Yes, I'm sorry, there's not one of those things on here to raise my hand, so it's just going to be like this, I guess.
Okay.
I just wanted to compliment you. I think that this is very exciting. I've been to some other high schools that have this at sports events years ago, and I know that when we were talking about building the school, we were talking about all these things, so to hear that it's actually happening and all these different steps that you're doing and how much money you raised, I just am very impressed. Thanks so much.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, great. Keep
Thank
us
you.
up to date.
I will, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. She might be staying. Next up, Commissioners of Boys Basketball preseason travel to Western Mass.
Yes.
Where are you at?
Yes, ma'am. So I asked our coach to come too, just for moral support. But he came to me, our coach, Dan Taylor, for our head boys basketball coach. He came to me at the end of last season when we have our postseason meeting with this idea of doing a preseason overnight trip to Western Mass, doing a couple scrimmages and making an experience for the players and for the younger players, something to look forward to or something to draw players in and sort of keep them in. I give Coach a lot of credit because he's always thinking forward. He's always looking to improve our program. He puts in more time into coaching than any coach that we have, pretty much. It's like he's thinking about basketball 24/7. And he sends me emails that are incredibly long with all of his thoughts on it. But we're very lucky to have him in that he wants to do and create these types of experiences for our student athletes. It's pretty awesome. So the Triple B during preseason, the first weekend after tryouts, he's already sort of talked with other coaches and set up the 2 scrimmages as well as a visit to the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield and, which I think is more impressive, a visit with the UMass Amherst basketball team to go to a practice, observe a practice, see their campus, meet their coaches, meet their players, which is such a great experience, or will be hopefully a great experience for our boys to go to see basketball at that level and really take something away from it. So it's not just a, getaway. It's a working trip where they can go away, they can build relationships with each other and camaraderie with each other. They can get some preseason work in themselves, and they can learn from some of the best in the country.
Thank you. Questions, discussion? Ms. Games wants to go?
I love team bonding, so this is wonderful. I just have a question on the financial bit, because it looks like at the bottom, you have money in the basketball fund, so.
He does, yeah, he already has the money to pay for it, so financially, the basketball team will be paying for it
Okay.
with the money that they have.
All right, so we're just approving it, okay.
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Yes.
Ms. Tully?
A question about this. I think this sounds awesome and would be so happy to support it. And is there a vision that this would be an annual thing that students would be able to look forward to and kind of count on
Yes.
being able to do?
Yep.
Ms. Henderson?
Chaperones?
The 4 coaches.
Perfect.
So it only be about 12 players max and then 4 coaches.
It's a good ratio.
Yeah, it is.
Is this, question, is this just the varsity team?
It is just the varsity.
are we opening it up to JV as well, or is this a more of a containment?
We will not, yeah, it would be for the varsity, and I think something for the JV team to aspire to make varsity. This is a reward.
Good answer. Okay. Any other questions?
Do we need to vote on this?
We don't have it as an item to vote on tonight. If it's necessary, we can definitely, if somebody wants to, we can, or if the timing isn't, I mean, I think you know how we feel. If the timing isn't constraining, we could just vote on it officially at our next meeting. It's up to you.
Yeah, I don't think we're under a time constraint, so you can put it.
We'll put it on our next meeting to vote. I see no issue.
Awesome. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leah, can you just make a note of that? Thank you so much. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the FY22 Annual Financial Report, Budget Transfers. Michael McMillan is joining us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to just give it 2 seconds, just trying to get this presentation set up. All right, so I circulated in your papers, is it still there? Our finance report, and there's a lot of, so first of all, apologies it's so late, so I wasn't here for the last meeting when we normally have done it, but I was on vacation, sorry.
Another vacation?
I mean, I was really unwell.
So
Yeah,
we filled our
I was
time.
very
That was
unwell.
okay.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
I'm sure people were, I know the public was clamoring for it, so I'm sorry I had to delay it this long. I included a summary page, and tonight I'm going to do a summary of the summary. So I'm going to just cover these 4 numbers. Yes. As soon as my internet gets back online, I can zoom in on these, but if you can see them from here anyway. 4 numbers I wanted to talk about tonight were, first of all, the unencumbered balance at the end of FY22 was $1.3 million. So that is a little higher than we've normally seen. And really the reason for that, there were 4 or 5 reasons. One of the biggest reasons is the next number along there, which is a reduction in school choice and charter tuition fees that we had to pay. So we had fewer students leaving the district through the school choice program and through charter tuition, particularly to the Lighthouse charter. So some of that, so on the charter side of things, some of that is just a lottery, because getting into some of those schools is a lottery. Sometimes it works in our favour, sometimes it works against. This year it worked in our favour. Whether that's going to become part of a trend, but every time you don't lose a student, you don't lose them, because often they go in 6th grade, say, to the Lighthouse, or 8th grade to Sturgis. Then if you don't lose them, then you'll keep them for the entirety of their middle school years or their high school years. So hopefully that has a long-term benefit, but obviously it remains to be seen if more students get in the lottery next year. Then school choice, the numbers have been going down, and the numbers of students leaving the district through the school choice program is as low as it's been for a number of years, which is great. Part of that is that we were kind of top-heavy in the number of school choice students we had, so the upper grades had more students leaving through school choice, so then as they graduate out, they're not being replaced by students in the lower grades exiting through school choice. So that's great as well. And overall, the numbers of students down was down 20% from the previous year on the number of students. So that's great. So we had budgeted a certain amount to pay for that tuition. Those students didn't leave, so we weren't assessed that amount. And so that was part of the reason for the surplus. In addition, we did just see a lot of turnover positions that took a little time to fill, and that gave us some surplus as well. So if we budgeted a teacher position, for example, and that person happened to be near the top of the scale, and they left and were replaced by somebody as low down and less years experience, then that's all a saving for us, and that all created a surplus as well. There was like the Spanish position at the high school where we really struggled to fill that position, and so while there's nobody in that position, that's all a saving on what we budgeted, because we budget a full year salary, and if that position's not filled, then that creates a surplus. So is this gonna? So there's did you see that? I don't know if you missed that.
Nice.
There you go. So And so there was the charter school we talked about, so there's the surplus, and that, the charter then, so revenue I just wanted to talk about. So our district revenue did increase. Part of that was just that in 2021 there was some delays in expenditure, kind of still from COVID. So our grants, many of our two biggest federal grants are multi-year, so you have 27 months to spend them. So we spent a little less in 21 and a little more in 22 as our services ramped back up again. So although the grant didn't actually go up for like our biggest special education grant, we just spent more of it in 22. So that's part of the reason.
Start over, we didn't hear anything.
All right, okay. Hi, my name is Michael McMillan. So for our revenue, the biggest special education grant didn't change that much, but we just drew down more of it to spend it in 22, so it shows as a revenue. We did see an $80,000 increase in our Title I grant, though, so that did benefit the district, and we had more revenue based on that. We also applied for emergency relief funds through FEMA, and there's a lot of work. I have to give a kudos to Eileen Riley, our district accountant, because she spent a lot of time navigating the labyrinth of forms and regulations to apply for FEMA a reimbursement, but was successful. And we have one application in, which was $130,000, I think, and we have two more outstanding, and they will also become revenue in FY23, hopefully. But so that's a all good increase in our revenue. And then so the kind of net effect of the reduction in expenditure and the slight increase in revenue is that all money kind of flows through to what is known for regional school districts as excess and deficiency. So in this case we have an excess, so we will have funds remaining at the end of the year. So that will be audited. Our auditors will come in and they will review our books. They will submit information to Department of Revenue, and once the Department of Revenue has certified it, that money is available for the school committee to vote as part of offsetting the assessment for FY24 budget. So we always have some money available, so we wouldn't use all of this $2.7 million. But I think that's slightly higher than we've had in previous years, and so we would have more money available to use as excess, to apply to the budget. But we try and carry about 5%, which is around 2.4 million. So we'd carry at least, somewhere in that so we used 800,000 this year. I think we might be in a position to be slightly more than that for next year. I would just say, so 2.7 million is just my estimate. That's not been edited or audited. The auditors will come in and they'll tell me how wrong I was. This is my first year publicizing my estimate, so I really hope it's going to be close. And then, so where does that leave? Russell, before I go on, are there any questions about those numbers or any numbers in the report?
She's really excited. Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
I was just curious, was your estimate close last year?
Do you know what? As I was saying it, I was like, I didn't do an estimate last year, so it's the first time I've done it and been public about it, so I'm just going for it.
Secretly last year.
Yeah, I'm not telling you, it was terrible. No, it's kind of a complicated process. So for last year we worked with the auditors, so we understood it a little bit better, so that we could kind of work it out ourselves this year.
Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, kind of a numbers question. I'm curious, well, first of all, great job that we're keeping so many of our kids and they're not choicing out. But for those that are,
yes,
are we collecting information? Because I still would love to hear why people leave. I mean, what is the reason? So I don't know if there is an exit interview. I mean, I know we talked about this 2-3 school committees ago.
Yeah, I don't have that information, but that is something we could look at.
Okay.
Dr. Carpenter?
The principals do have, do sort of keep tabs on what the trend is. So, so we do have information on who's leaving and kind of have a feel for, what are they seeking if they're going to Lighthouse, or what are they seeking if they're going to Nauset. And, it's also nice on here, I think the trend of students leaving us keeps heading it's heading in our direction, where we're seeing fewer and fewer go. And, and it's also this year creating some, we're creating our own challenges in that, we have significantly more kids at the high school than we typically would project to be at the high school, because we would have expected losses to Nauset or losses to Cape Tech, and seeing more and more of our students just staying. So it's a good problem, but we definitely were having to scramble as we started to see the numbers materialize in families that were actually going to stay, and had to sort of add some staffing at the last moment to go and address class sizes. And the class sizes at the high school this year, because of the success, are a little higher than they would typically be.
Yeah, and that's all good. I'm just very excited. I'm just, as one school committee member, still very curious. I mean, I could figure out why people would go to the Tech. To me, that makes sense. But I'm curious, like Lighthouse, why do people go to Lighthouse? Why do they go to Sturgis? I'm just curious. I don't need to know the name. I don't need to know any of that. I'm just curious what makes somebody think that that's the best option. That's all.
Or when they're done with Lighthouse, why they choose Nauset over Monomoy.
Right, exactly. Yep, just curious.
We could definitely put that
Okay,
out there
yeah.
for next meeting. Ms. Tully?
Related to that, actually, I'm sort of looking at it from the other angle and wondering, like, what that data, what's the story or the inferences that the administrative team is kind of making, or, landing at, related to that trend of fewer and fewer students who are coming up through Monomoy leaving. To me, I can make up a whole bunch of things, but off the top of my head, I would think that speaks to the strength of the district. And I'd be specifically curious about why people are choosing to stay, because I think that's really ripe information to build on and see where our strengths are as a district, and how to build on those as we go forward and as we go into our next strategic planning process. So I don't know if there's any way to gather information or data about that, why people are also choosing to stay. I think that's just, it's important information that would be helpful for us.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, we're going to bring us back, and we'll make note that that's a topic of discussion, definitely want to dig more into, moving forward, agenda item, or talking to Dr. Carpenter and figuring out how we can kind of get those numbers out. So if no one has any more questions for Michael at this point, I think we're going to let him continue.
So it just really, in conclusion, is just looking ahead to the FY24 budget, which will be starting depressingly soon. So we'll be coming back to you with the budget timetable soon, but just some of the things to think about that we'll be looking at is, like, what percentage or proportion of our excess and deficiency we use to offset, and how much is available to offset the FY24 budget. That'll be one of the issues. And also those trends in school choice, in charter school, tuitions, whether or not those continue. And then obviously also just the ongoing challenges we've had with recruitment and retention, well, mostly recruitment. And then, when we saw some more experienced teachers leaving during COVID or just after COVID, what if that continues to happen? We saw so many new staff hired this year, and if that sort of level of turnover is going to continue, and what that means for the budget.
And you are...
Next, Thompson. Well, so there was, sorry.
Yeah.
If we're all...
If we don't have any more questions on the annual financial report, are there any other questions or discussion? Yeah, I know she had a raising hand, but she's not raising her hand.
No questions.
Games.
Just love the reports you put out.
You like my
so
one pager?
good, so easy to read,
right,
so
good.
visually appealing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I love a good one-pager.
I know, yeah, one pager.
Yeah.
Well, I was bored even writing the whole report. I was like, I can't make people read this. But all the detail and data is there if you feel so inclined, but I'm glad that was helpful.
Well, if everyone is content with our four top numbers, we're going to move on.
Just before you do, so
Yes.
one was the budget transfer request.
I was getting to that.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
The next
Sorry,
part
Chair.
is, there is a budget transfer request. Michael McMillan.
Thank you very much, Chair. And so there was a memo included in your papers outlining the transfer, just to transfer a budget from some of those areas where we had a surplus to other areas where there was additional expenditure. And this is between major accounts. So under the budget policy, if we want to transfer money between major accounts, we come to you for approval.
Okay.
Yes, please do.
Before, Ms. Henderson, 1 second, I just want to clarify, and maybe this is your clarifying question, when you have the motion, do you want it by account number?
No.
No.
Well, you don't, I mean,
Okay.
so it's between major accounts, so, and it's detailed, I can't remember how I worded the motion, but,
You worded the motion
so however much,
to approve the budget transfers are listed in the memo provided.
yeah, to whatever level of detail.
Okay, so that's why I wanted to confirm. So, Ms. Henderson? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to move to approve the budget transfers as listed in the memo provided to the school committee in our agenda packet.
I would second that.
And any questions or discussion on the transfer? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Stout? Aye. Ms. Tolley? Aye. Ms. Games? Aye. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mrs. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. Great.
Fantastic. Thank you very
Michael.
much.
Next item on the agenda, approval of class of 2027 student activity account. Michael McMillan.
Thank you very much. So, we have a number of student activities, which is really funds that students raise and spend, and we, manage the funds or look after the funds for them. We create a new activity for each event, each type of activity that comes along, and have your approval before we do. So this is obviously every graduating class has an account, and now we're ready to set up the account for the class of 2027.
Great, thank you. Ms. Henderson?
I move to approve the creation of a student activity account for the class of 2027.
And a second? Ms. Tolley, second. And questions or discussion for Michael? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Ms. Stout? Aye. Ms. Tolley? Aye. Ms. Gaines? Aye. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up on the agenda is the ESP Peer Mentoring Pilot Program, presented by Ms. Cindy Gushy.
I just have to make sure there's nothing there. My name is Cindy Gushy. I live at 621A, Route 28 in Harwichport, and I am a paraeducator at Harwich Elementary School. And for the last couple of years, as I've been listening, that more and more school districts and more and more states are really beginning to look at the value of peer mentoring for the ESPs. There are 9 careers. I'm talking today about instructional assistants whose new name is going to become paraeducators. As we, in our contract, we still have to be referred to as instructional assistants, but nationwide that is choosing. So I have been thinking about how to implement this program, and I attended the National ESP Conference in New Orleans at the end of March. And a lot of my workshops were geared to looking at peer mentoring programs and looking at what is the value, who's involved on your mentoring team, how do you go about this process. And I decided to take the NEA ESP Peer Mentoring Leadership Program. I started in June and I finished. My paper got turned in, 39-page paper got turned in this week. So my main reasons for beginning a mentoring program are to retain staff. We've had a lot of instructional assistant turnover in the last few years. For staff and student consistency and success, to show that this program will ensure that this continues. For a better work environment for everyone, because everyone needs to become involved in what the school climate is like, and those people that come like a month after school starts, so they don't come until the spring to fill positions, they don't always feel like the work environment is what they actually thought it was going to be. And they found that through the mentoring program, there tend to be fewer absences. People feel more valued, they feel more appreciated,
They want to stay in their job. They want to be there, and that's a really important thing to me. And through this 2-month process, one of the things that hit me strongly was a quote from, and I brought my notebook so I can quote it right correctly. His name is Louis Goldstein, and he's a former assistant superintendent of the Princeton, New Jersey school system. And he says, referring to peer mentoring, is this program helps to keep ESPs on an equal footing with teachers and certified staff. It shows that we take their professional growth seriously as we do teachers. The work that ESPs do is critical to the success of the district, and we are always looking to implement programs that show how valued ESPs are in the Princeton Public Schools. And that resonated with me, that talking about being valued. So my program is to start an ESP mentoring program at Harwich Elementary School. Originally, there were going to be 3 new hires. As of this afternoon, there were 5 new hires for paraeducators. There was one that did a lane transfer from a different job field, and we have one assistant that was started, that was hired last March, and 2 of the administrative assistants have asked if they can join in just to learn a little about some of the things that we're going to be talking about, because they're also within the last 2 years of being hired. So I'm not looking for funding at this time because I know that we're in the middle of a contract year. I am applying for a grant from the NEA. I'm not sure what the funds are going to be, anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500. And I have a Zoom meeting on Wednesday at 3 o'clock to go over my grant application. I'm also going to be asking for funds from the MTA. I'm also going to be doing a mini grant, applying for a mini grant through Cape Cod 5, and I'm going to be looking for other funding sources. If worst comes to worst, I'll give mentors gifts out of my 31 collection. When I write this grant, I'm not looking so much as the coordinator to get paid. I just want to, as I write the grant, to show appreciation for the mentors stepping up to work with the mentees. I would like my hopes and my dreams going forward to start the program in October, and it's going to be building-based. Eventually, we will go to all 4 buildings. I want to have a meeting with the mentors and the mentees to give a clear idea of the programs and looking at specific needs related to the job in the school. I'd like to hold focus groups during one of the PLCs a month, and not just the mentors and the mentees, but any member of the staff that wanted to come to this focus group and join in the discussion of areas we're going to be getting along. I'd like to have a get together for the mentors and the mentees to get to know each other in a small group. My goal is to get the application distributed in the next 2 weeks to paraeducators at Harwich Elementary School. I'm also going to be attending Mark Smith's mentor training that he does with the teacher mentors. I'm going to go because I think it's important that there is some consistency between the teacher mentor program and the Esp mentor program. I'm getting forms created and printed. I met with Mark Smith yesterday to discuss some of the process that they go through. Getting mentor handbooks put together. And I want to speak with all the mentees before I do the matching. And I'm going to be asking other people to help me match just so that they might see things. So my goal is that we continue to work to show the value of ESPs, especially paraeducators, looking at respect, having meeting time either before school, after school duty, during PLC, or other time. I'm going to be looking to get a Zoom license also for the mentoring program, because as we go forward, there may be mentors who have to mentor between different buildings going down. So I'm putting a license into the NEA grant, and then we would have that for a period of time. So that's my goal, that's what I'm working towards. I just wanted to bring, some of you knew what I was doing. I'm going to be leaving in a few years. I'm old, as I tell all the kids. I want to know that I'm leaving ESPs, the instructional assistants, the peer educators, the administrative assistants, the food service workers, even the custodial staff and the bus drivers who are not all under our contract. But I want to make sure that they feel important. I think that we look at the turnover that is happening in all areas, not just in Monomoy, but, I mean, an example is a superintendent in New Hampshire is saying, come and work for me, even if you can only do it 3 hours a day, I need a body. So I would like to think that we didn't have to resort to that. I would like to think that if we start when they first get hired and we go over the school climate, we go over the expectations of the different jobs that are in the building, because sometimes we are asked to change positions. We talk about benefits, and I've spoken with Ellen a couple of times about this also. So that would be my goal, and I would like to come back and present again, like after the first of the year, to let you know where we stand and where we're going, and my goal is eventually to get it into the Unit B contract, which will not be for 2 years. I know that. I want to make sure you all understand that I am not asking for funds from you at all, unless you know of a grant source I can apply for. I just have to be, because of the issue before, I just want to be upfront that there's no money changing hands here.
All right. Cindy, thank you so much. I appreciate and applaud your passion and drive and extra work you're putting outside of your job to do this. So you're an asset to the district, and thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, I know that in the beginning that you were talking about small numbers of people, but as you got going, it was very clear when you went on and on about all the different aspects here. You've got a big undertaking. I love that you are taking the teacher program with Mark Smith to see what, works out of that and try to have some consistencies. There's so much going on here, and I love pilot programs because you can see what seems to work and what seems to not work so well. So I admire your really good heart and all your effort that you're putting into this, and I'd love to hear later on an update on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Henderson?
So just for some clarity, first of all, I think this is great. I think that, any new employee, it's nice to have somebody to connect with. But just a clarifying question, as you start this in October, are you training mentors?
Yes, I am.
And then, so the mentees aren't kind of coming online right away?
No, I'm going to connect them with a mentor, just like new teacher orientation, they knew who their mentors were, so they could reach out to them, but the actual training, the actual meetings aren't taking place, the specific meetings aren't taking place, as Mark says, until after they do the training. So I want to do the matches, and then we'll do the training.
Okay, so they'll know the matches, then you'll train the mentors, and then they'll have their meetings.
That's my plan.
All right, awesome.
Hopefully, cross my fingers.
Ms. Gates?
I'm such a big fan of mentoring programs, so this is excellent. And I wrote down the word belonging, which Mark Smith talks a lot about, because it gives a sense of belonging, and which I think should be our goal across the board with anything we're doing at Monomoy. So I commend you. And I also, as far as grants go, I would probably ask you to take a look at some of the companies. I mean, I don't know if I know Target does a field trip grant. I don't know if they have educational grants, but just looking at some of those, you might find some educational type grants.
Yeah, one of the grants that I found out about, I talked to Mark about yesterday, because you can use ESSA funds, but all our ESSA funds are already allocated, so that, and he was up to, I'm working on that. I'm also working with the new coordinator for the ESPs through the MTA. She actually is my mentor for this program, and she's not a mentor program, but they did it using leadership. So she's giving me some guidance also. I have contact people. We learned about 10 different mentoring programs, so I have contact people that I can do, and I was more interested in getting up and running, and now I'm going to look for the funding, so.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, even the one-on-one, but also as a group. I mean, I could just see you having not a lunch during the school day, but maybe a Saturday lunch. I don't know. But, just a time for everybody to get together, share a meal, talk about, the experience, whatever. There's a lot of possibility in this program, so I really appreciate you kicking it off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other questions? Or good? We look forward to hearing from you in January, I think you said.
Yes.
All right, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Next item on the agenda is the first reading of the 2022-2023 Monomoy Regional School Committee goals. Ms. Henderson has edited last meeting's goals. So do you want to take it from there with just the red changes? Or do you want to just go right to questions? What would you like to do?
I think right to questions, I think it's self-explanatory.
Does anyone have any specific questions about the goals as edited from our last meeting? Changes, grammatical errors, anything to point out? Ms. Tolley?
I have a question about goal number 4. The language and the words are clear. At our last policy subcommittee meeting, though, we discussed that first action step, number 1, the committee will review all policies related to curriculum. We're going to be discussing that process again at our next meeting, and I think it seemed like we needed a little bit more clarity around what specifically is intended to be the scope of all policies related to curriculum. Because curriculum shows up in many different ways, in many different policies, and so to help give us some guidance, we needed, and we're hoping for a little bit more clarity around what the task or the charge is from the full committee to help us focus our work.
So if I'm understanding, so goal 4 is support a comprehensive and proactive district-wide curriculum audit, which this is the one you guys discussed with Mark, and we discussed again last week.
Yeah.
The first action step was the committee will review all policies related to curriculum. That's committee level, not subcommittee level, correct?
So yes.
And I'm wondering if that's the first.
So I thought, maybe we're not there yet. Maybe there's another step that I'm missing that I thought we were at, or that we had passed already. I thought the policy subcommittee had already been charged with doing this, or starting to begin this work.
Well, as I read that, just for clarification, as I read the action step, what I read is the committee will review all policies related to curriculum. I don't read the subcommittee review all policies related to curriculum. I understand they're one and the same, though. So I'm wondering if we need to edit the action step for the committee to direct the subcommittee to review all policies related to curriculum and then further define what we mean by curriculum? Maybe? Ms. Games?
Yeah, okay, so I guess in my mind, the way that we operate is everything starts in our subcommittees and then comes to the committee. So I guess I just made an assumption that the policy would start this process.
Yeah.
And I think Melissa agreed to bring what she was aware of to our attention, and we would start there, and then as things come up or need to be changed or need to add or whatever, it would come to the full committee. I actually wrote down, because I know, and I don't think we're ready to bring it forward, but we talked about the library policy. I mean, because we don't we didn't, or don't, I guess, until it comes, we don't have a library policy. I mean, we do, because we talked about one, but to me, library falls into curriculum, because a lot of kids are coming in and getting books, you know. So I think to me, the way I read this was taking a look at what policies we have, which Melissa is going to bring to our attention, and we're going to take a look at what is there and what we are missing. Like the library policy. We didn't have one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's clear. I think part of how this action step landed on here was also in relation to the discussion that we had at our last meeting around the math resources and when and how that specific contract needed to come before the school committee. Even though it was related to curriculum, it sort of opened up the lens of, hey, we should start looking at our curriculum more. So I think having clarity around, curriculum has so many different tentacles and how it shows up in our policies. And so I think understanding what the parameters or the focus or even maybe the priorities of what the committee wants to review related to curriculum.
So the subcommittees identified that when they're going, okay, we know what our charge is, we're supposed to review all the policies related to curriculum, but where do you start and stop?
Right, and so having some more direction from the full committee, I think would help the policy subcommittee begin the work to do this with the clearest intention of why this is here.
Do you feel like that's necessary in the action step, or do you feel like that's just a communication of the subcommittee back to us going, hey, we took the charge, we started to do what you said, but this is what we've come, now we're like, wait a minute, we need to bring it back to committee level and have a topic of conversation under reports and discussions on how we want to pull that apart. And then the committee will go, okay, we've categorized it into 4 categories, and for the first quarter, the committee's going to charge the subcommittee to look at whatever we do, math or curriculum as far as purchase, or however we break it up. I wonder if that's we're not, that might be a Mark. I'm wondering if that's a Mark Melissa's policy knows them in and out and knows what she's dealing with, and Mark is very, obviously he's the head of our curriculum, so I'm wondering between all of us, if they might be able to help devise what that list looks like, and then categorically they could bring it back. I mean, obviously that's not our area of expertise.
Yeah, I think that's a totally acceptable and agreeable process. I just wanted to bring it up in relation to, do we need to change this goal, this action step at all, or can it be further down the line that's fleshed out more?
Got it. Misunderstood.
I think, I don't know who I agree with, but I think that we can leave this as the action step, but knowing that, you guys have already taken a step forward in this, and there is a lot, and I think that's why that kind of came up, is that curriculum does land in a lot of our policies, or many of our policies, right? And so kind of determining where those are, and are we covering what we need to cover in our policies. So I feel like to leave it a little more broad, and then charge them and have the subcommittee come back to us with questions and clarity.
Yep, that's totally,
I agree.
Fine. And
Ms. Games?
Yeah, I don't know if it would help to add a couple of extra words. The committee will review and conduct an assessment of all policies related to curriculum. And the reason I put assessment in there, and I hope I'm remembering Melissa's words correctly, she's not here, I believe she said we don't have a lot of curriculum. Did she not say that? But maybe I should. For some reason, I think we don't have that many based on what we talked about at our last meeting. So, and again, the way I read this was it was a chance for us to review and conduct an assessment. What do we have? What do we need? Like the library policy. Mark brought that to our attention, that we do not have a library policy. So, and it may very well be the policy subcommittee will work with Melissa and Mark. Maybe Mark comes to a couple of our meetings. And then it's us working together to conduct an assessment within us, and that with Mark's help. Because I think this is all contributing to the audit that he has asked us to, support, yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mark would be an excellent direction to go. I hear you on the assessment piece, though, that if you're actually assessing, not currently what we have, but maybe
Or
what we
inventory,
need.
maybe an inventory is a better word. I mean, I guess.
I think that works, and it's a small adjustment, so I don't think, if we just add a word, we're not gonna have to bring this back for a
Oh, I see.
second
Yeah, that's
reading.
right. Yeah.
Because that's what we kind of want to move it forward, but I believe that if we just add one word, it's not changing the integrity of the goal, so I think we would be fine to come back on a second reading on this and not have to redo it again, if that's what people are apprehensive about. So if you feel like it doesn't, I mean, I think everyone at the table understands where we're going with it, and it doesn't, the way it's written right now is so broad, like Ms. Henderson said, it allows us to do whatever, assess, do whatever it is we decide to do, and I think that it's a much larger job for the policy subcommittee specifically than just what we normally do, and it's a larger conversation we're gonna have to have with Mark. So, I think a lot came from you talking about what we've asked you to do, and we're just gonna have to go from there, but I could go either way on the action step one. Dr. Carpenter, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I think Tina's point on there aren't many policies that are really specifically focused on curriculum. In fact, there are two really clear ones. One's curriculum development, one's curriculum adoption. So I think those are the logical first place to start, and then I also agree with Danielle. Curriculum touches so many of the other policies throughout the policy manual as well.
Go ahead, Ms. Henderson.
So can you say that again with the assessment piece?
Yep. The committee will review and conduct an assessment or conduct an inventory, whatever we feel more comfortable with, of all policies related to curriculum. So whether you want assessment or inventory, because I think we're trying to understand, with Melissa's help and eventually Mark's, what do we already have? What are we missing? Like the library policy. What is it that we're missing that we need?
I like the word assessment better than inventory.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. Mr. Russell.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Listening, I think, I agree with what is the intention is something in my mind, but the other thing is kind of a do list. The committee will review all policies related to curriculum. If the committee means this body right here, I see Mark Smith's and Melissa, their role is key. They're full-time employees. They could do this in a matter of days and then come forward to us with a one sheet that explains where are we lacking and where have we enhanced the curriculum with these documents. And then from that point, we can then gain some level of understanding as to where we find ourselves with curriculum. If you read it straightforward, as a member of the committee, we'll review all policies regarding curriculum. I don't see us doing that with any of us here. And we have a difficult time enough to get straight whether or not we should have subcommittees virtually or not virtually, which was a good conversation, but one wonders. So not that Mark is not here, therefore we can just assign it to him, but I think Mark and Melissa is a good start. And give them X number of months or whatever to answer that action step number one. The committee will receive updates. I think that's appropriate. So anyways, that's my thought.
Ms. Tully.
Okay, I hear that, Terry, and I appreciate that you looked at this a different way than I did. And that changes potentially our agenda for Monday, for the policy subcommittee meeting. And so I guess even having that clarity is helpful at this point in time about this action step. Does this trigger anything? Does this mean, right here, does this action step mean that a conversation is happening and starting in the policy subcommittee meeting, or not? Or can we approach it the way that Terry just laid out, as come back to this at another meeting, have a conversation about this, and ask Mark and Melissa to guide this as well. And I don't mean to, I just think I'm just looking for some clarity about a meeting that we have coming up related to this particular action step.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, having been on the curriculum subcommittee since Harwich, before Monomoy started, basically the state, Mass Association for School Committees, creates policies. They have templates of what they like to share with us as a starting point. And some schools leave just what they have in there. Most schools adapt it to suit what they want, adding things or more detailing things. And that's what, when Melissa comes to our school committee, I mean, we can think of things ourselves like every school committee can, but Melissa will look at law and she'll make recommendations, and there are at least 3 of those things that MASC has. 2 of them you mentioned, I can't remember the 3rd one right now, but at least 3 that are on curriculum, but I think it says curriculum and instruction. And so, you know, my thought is that we would start looking at what the state and what the state template says for that, and then we can decide from that, like we always do. I think Melissa, I think she always starts from that.
Ms. Henderson?
So I wonder if, instead of going round and round, if it's on your agenda already, I wonder if we just start with that, and then you bring it back to the full committee and say, you know, this is a task that is, you know, doable for our subcommittee, or this is, you know, beyond our subcommittee, and we want to look for more help from administration. But I think it all falls under, if we leave it at that, the committee will review and conduct an assessment of all policies related to curriculum. If we leave it at that, I think you can still do the work that you're already planning on doing, but yet we have the flexibility if we need to, you know, get more input from the administration. How does that feel?
And I would say, on that point, if it's an agenda item for your subcommittee, just kind of hash it out as you did at the last meeting where you guys were talking about it, and figure out like what's attainable and what's not attainable, in your reach, not in your reach. And maybe it's not necessarily talking about the policies yet, but maybe it's talking about what's the best way to do this. Like Melissa, with you and Mark, like that to me, using the server from MASC, that's how she gets a lot of the ones that we need to, you know, you've also got to somehow prioritize what needs to get done and incorporate this into it. So instead of looking at the specific policies and the number of them and what's curriculum, what's not, let maybe part of the subcommittee's role in this can be, okay, we looked at it and this is how we think we should do it, and come back to the committee as a whole and then say, this is what we'd like to do. We'd like to charge Melissa and Mark with doing this piece, and then we think it needs to come back to the committee. But if we could take the opportunity to have you guys as policy start. That, you know, don't spend a ton of time on it, but ask the question, think about your process and what that's going to look like, and then what the bigger piece looks like, and then come back, and maybe that would be a good start. And I agree with Meredith, it kind of encompasses what you're doing anyway, so there's no rule on how we do it.
Okay, great.
Within the action step. Ms.
Yeah, I was just going to say yes to what you're saying, because Melissa, my understanding is she's already doing it. She's going to come to Monday and show us probably what Scott just told us, and that's what we're going to look at. And again, to go to Sharon's point, MASC does have these templates, which is where Mark got the library policy, of which we reviewed, but we didn't quite agree with a couple of the statements. So Mark is researching those before we bring it to all of you. So the work is already happening, I guess is what I want to say.
One last point, just to close the loop on it and affirm that. So our agenda is specifically looking at discussing a process for reviewing the curriculum policy. So I think the way that you just landed it syncs up and it's fine, and we can keep moving, and that all makes sense with where we've landed.
Sorry, but it needs to stay on your agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
That's fine.
Thank you for the clarity on that.
Yep.
Yep.
Any other questions, grammatical things for the subcommittee goals? I just want to make sure that Leah has the edit correct. Do you have it correctly?
So we are moving forward with the conduct an assessment.
Okay, and everyone agrees, a consensus on that? And this will come back for a second read at our next meeting on the 22nd, 22. Mr. Russell?
Madam Chair, a separate goal, and
Yes?
I need some clarity. And I think a month ago I said this is brand new to me. Goal 3, the committee will invite representatives of local tribes to discuss history of indigenous people of Chatham and Harwich. Action step 3, the committee will explore land acknowledgement for our area. I mentioned a month or so ago, not that I don't think that's a good thing, I just don't know what a good thing is. If it's new to me, the general public, even with one, and it says here we'll invite some people here. I think that's important because rather than have the general community that does not attend a meeting say, what's that all about? Mashpee does it one way, why? I just think our population in Chatham and Harwich would like some chance to raise their knowledge level about number 3. So a lot of people agree with me. Thank you.
Terry, do you have a directive or are you okay with the way the action step is, but you want more clarification in it? Or do you want us to rewrite the action step to be more specific? Would that help?
Yeah, and I'm not looking for all of us or whoever's going to do it with more work, but if you understand my point, the committee will explore land acknowledgement. All of us this year understood what that was? I didn't.
No.
Yeah, so I need some reading, or I need to do some homework.
We're going to explore it. Ms. Anderson?
So I think, Terry, I'm kind of with you, because I didn't know about it either until
Oh, thank God.
until the presentation from Dr. Carpenter and
Sherry
Armstrong. Thank you. But I think that's why we put it in the action step, to learn more. And I think that having Indigenous people of Chatham and Harwich come to talk to us about it, I think we will understand more about what that land acknowledgement would be if it's something we want to take on. So I think we're all learning with actions, with goal number 3.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, and just, I'm a big person on words, so "will explore" doesn't tie us to anything.
Right.
It just means that we're just going to explore this, and then we get to decide if it fits our district demographics or not. So it's just an exploration.
We're going on a trip, Terry. Bring your backpack. Any other discussion on the goals? All right, and Leah has our correction, so we will move forward. We don't need to vote on that. No. We're going to move forward. Just wanted to check myself. And we have the first reading of the Educational Opportunities for Children in Foster Care from the Policy Subcommittee. Ms. Tolley?
Sure, yes. So we have 2 policies, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Tina or Sharon, are both of these, these are not both new policies.
They're brand spanking new policies.
Never
They're all in red.
Never seen them before.
Yeah. So they
right,
don't exist
okay.
currently. Yes.
And these are ones that are, Melissa has a deadline to upload these in October. And so we had our summer meeting to discuss these, and I wish Melissa was here to speak more eloquently about the impact that these policies have, particularly the ones, the educational opportunities for children in foster care. She shared a lot of really great information with us about how helpful having a policy like this is for her and her role and other people who navigate those situations with students and families in the district. I'm sorry, am I on the education, children foster care? Yeah, sorry, the first one, okay. She also, Melissa shared more about the best interest determination and how that is sort of conducted, and she felt it was really, really good and really solid that this was in the policy, and that the policy was rooted sort of in that process. And I think that's sort of the bulk of.
And all of her sources are on the back. So yes, there is these are two brand spanking new policies that Melissa feels very strongly that she needs, we need in place. And so we had a good discussion, learned quite a lot, and it was unanimous, all of us. I think those of us that were there, that we adopt these.
I just raised my hand. Mrs. Henderson.
So did you shift any of the language? This is how it came from the state?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't touch it. Yeah. This is
I just
exactly
did it
how it
again.
came.
I'd like to talk. I think we should encourage, and I can talk to her, Melissa, that if she has something to share about each of these policies or one of these policies at the second read, that's a perfect time here or then to do that, especially when not talking edits and things like that. And it's certainly always good information, especially because they're new policies. I'm shocked we didn't have them. I did have one question, and it's okay if you guys don't remember, because I know you said she was very passionate about this. It's on the immediate enrollment, section C, and I'm talking about the foster care.
Yep.
Did she say anything about number 2? It says that if the student does not have immediate access to immunization records, so we're talking about a foster child moving quickly into another foster home and transitioning to another district, that the immunization record, the student shall be permitted to enroll under a personal exception. And I was wondering what that is, just curious, and this is something we could ask of her to maybe be, head her off with, this is a question, can we talk about it? And I'm assuming she's pulling this, obviously, from her sources, immunization records, immunizations as soon as possible. My red flag goes up on, a child not immunized. So I'm just wondering if I'm reading it too literally or not, and if it fits within our guidelines for the district with our school nurses and things like that. And I'm sure the answer is yes, but Dr. Carpenter, do you have a?
I was just going to say, I mean, there are families who, for different religious and other exemptions, have children who aren't immunized. And I think this is just trying to take, the lack of an immunization record and remove that as a barrier to get a very vulnerable child placed back in a learning situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, that was all I had. Any other questions or comments for the policy sub? All right, so then these can both come back for a second reading, and we'll remember to ask Melissa if she wants to. She can elaborate on each of the policies a little more if she feels that's appropriate. Okay, and moving on to the Harwich Community Playground at Harwich Elementary School ribbon cutting ceremony.
Cue the music for a celebration. So,
Are those blueberries or cranberries? Oh, it says cranberries.
So this Saturday, 10 a.m., there will be a small celebration, where we've invited families to come. It's Harwich's playground, so we anticipate that there will be some members of the select board and or town manager who may speak. I have drafted Ms. Henderson to come and also mention some words. I highly recommend the preschool carousel. Try it out. But it's just nice to see it all done. We have worked with Tom Blute at Cross Memorial to get a little stone paver to acknowledge that this was supported with CPC funds, and all of the original pavers that families had, gotten their names on as part of Castle for the Clouds are being laid, and I think all of those will be laid and finished up tomorrow prior to this. So Rick Travers and Rick Soroy in particular, our lead custodian at Harwich Elementary, has been putting down those pavers. But it's nice to have a little public celebration, and the kids have been really enjoying it all for a good part of the summer and definitely the beginning of this school year.
Great, thank you. So come one, come all, Saturday, September 10th at 10 a.m. I'm a little concerned that they look like blueberries. I'm just going to say it. I might go paint them. Attention to detail. All right, moving on to subcommittee reports, strategic plan updates, TLA timeline. Is that Dr. Carpenter? Are you doing
So
that?
we don't have anything in our packet related to that. Is there anything that is?
I think we could just, so we have a timeline that we've kind of worked out with TLA that will have I think some of the key components is that a survey will be administered to the entire educational community, parents, students, staff, and the greater community, starting October 7th, running through the 21st. Focus group meetings will begin October 4th and run through the 7th, and they will again be one focus group that'll be students, one with staff, one with administrators, one with school committee, one with town officials, business community, businesses, and what else have I missed in there? But we have we'll have a focus group for all of those, including one sort of virtual focus group for those who couldn't hit any of the others, and then starting right after those focus groups, a development team that will be comprised of a handful of individuals in each of those groupings will start the process of developing the portrait of the graduate, and those will be sort of bi-monthly meetings running through November into January. And the goal is to come to the committee February 16th with a draft of the portrait of the graduate, and then, as I told our staff, then the hard work begins, because it's how do you take that draft and really operationalize it and embed those skills and mindsets in what we're doing. So that's, there's a whole extra phase that begins after that I think will become a big piece of our next strategic plan.
Fantastic. So February 16th, we should have a draft of the portrait of the graduate.
February 16th.
Goal. All right, cool. Thank you. Any questions on the update? All right, moving on. Superintendent's report.
I don't have recognitions and acknowledgements for tonight. Just kind of moving on to the next one, other than the fact that the school year has started. This may have been one of the smoothest school years to start in a while. I don't know if it's just because
I can only imagine what will happen tomorrow.
After the last couple of years that we've gone through. Seriously. So it's just been nice. I shared with our staff at Convocation. I mean, it was just nice to be back together. Mask optional. There were a couple of people who are still wearing masks, but to be back mask optional, to not have Leah in the auditorium the day before convocation, putting taped X's on every other seat and lining out every other row. And, so to be able to sit next to each other and, just to be together again it was just such a refreshing way to start the school year and to kind of be back to the way we want schools to be and feel like. I shared with with staff a quote that Mark Smith had found that was the quotes from William Barclay. It says, "Endurance is not just the ability to bear a hard thing, but to turn it into glory." And was just thanking them for what they had done over the last couple of years, which is really, make a bad situation, shine in the light of it. I spent some time talking with our staff, just quickly mentioning just how many new faces we had in the room. We have hired more people this summer than I think we've ever hired in the time I've been here. We have 50 new staff members and 23 people who are existing staff members who are in different roles this year. So, so it's a lot of people in new roles in our buildings. I believe we only have one or two positions that are still lingering open, that are still hard to find. It's very hard to find school psychologists, reading teachers, and some of these specialists. It's not just Monomoy struggling to find them. It's many school districts. I also quickly went over some of the highlights that we'll be touching in School Safety Week that will be starting up on the 19th, including that we'll have Parent University, and that we would end the week with a half day on Friday to get Crisis Go up and running with the staff and get everybody trained on that. I shared with everybody sort of an overview of the Portrait of the Graduate process and what we'll be doing, why, and where they can fit into it. And then I focused the bulk of the end of my conversation with our staff, looking at a long-term goal that the admin team has been talking about all summer in terms of where what we see as a long-term goal for our district, which is being a school district where students feel like they belong, are successful, and where demographics are no longer a predictor of a student's success. And I said the words belong and success, are sort of small words, but once you start, thinking about it, there's a lot of layers that you unpackage in terms of, does a child feel like they belong? And what does belonging for that child really mean? And then sort of went a step further to talk about success. That that we have students who can be straight A students but don't feel successful. Maybe they don't feel successful because they don't feel the belonging piece. And so talked about if we want to really talk about success, the many layers of success that we need to look at. So anyway, we've started off the school year. I gave a sort of special kudos to Faith Rushnick in my comments. Faith has taken over Tony London's role as the district transportation coordinator, and in my shoes, at the beginning of the school year, it's like, oh, too many times you're getting phone call after phone call, or your assistant's fielding phone call after phone call about transportation. Knock on wood, it's been really quiet. It's been a very smooth transition between transportation coordinators, and the buses, I think, are running better than they have at this point in the school year over the last 10 years. So things are going well. We still are bus driver challenged. We are, one bus driver calling in sick away from having to do a scramble at the last minute with not having enough buses. And I know that some of the parents of athletes are probably a little concerned that we don't have the buses, enough drivers to get our student athletes to venues like we had in the past. It's, so the bus driver shortage continues to be an ongoing district issue, not just for us, but for school districts across the state. Last Monday was also the Chatham Select Board's meeting where they had a couple things related to us on the agenda. They first had a vote to set the time on when to handle the school committee vacancy for Nancy Scott's position. They spent a lot of time really, talking about kudos for the work that Nancy has done, over the last decade, and her role in helping the district regionalize and get us to where we are. They set a deadline to apply for the vacancy by October 1st, and then those applicants would be reviewed and discussed with the Chatham members of the school committee and the select board at a date soon after that, October 1st. The second item on their agenda related to us was the Stepping Stones parcel that the school committee had declared as surplus at its May 6th meeting. The select board voted unanimously to declare that parcel surplus for affordable and attainable housing, and that needs to then move forward to town meeting, to have town meeting hopefully support that same recommendation. I think at the meeting, they had said that that approval, that there would need to be 2/3 vote at town meeting to have it become land used for affordable attainable housing. And at the meeting, they had mentioned that the 2-ish acres should sustain roughly some sort of 8-bedroom, setup, between, what type of structure or structures are put on the property, but there could be 8 bedrooms worth of new residents that hopefully could benefit from the affordable attainable housing. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Becker. And we have one more action item for this evening, the FY22 priority invoice. We're just looking for a motion to approve Caitlin Otto's course reimbursement. The total eligible reimbursement is actually only for $1,500, so that's why it doesn't add up. Ms. Henderson?
I would like to move to approve the FY22 invoices as presented in our packet.
I would second that.
Okay, and a roll call. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. All right, and motion, I would entertain a motion with all the presentation of the warrants, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. And roll call, Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye, adjourning at 8:15.